All right, let's begin the session. Now, the last time we covered many of the aspects and we went into the understanding of the mental body, the dissociation and separation between the physical, the etheric, the astral, and the mental. And we had a deeper understanding of the separation of the bodies and what it really means when we identify with the self and not so much with the physical or the other energetic vehicles. So, with that kind of awareness in mind, we shall start with an invocation. All right. So, please close your eyes, take a deep breath. Relax your shoulders, relax your body. Keeping your eyes closed, connect the tongue to the palate. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. Inhale slowly and deeply, exhale slowly and deeply. Be aware of your physical body. Be aware of yourself sitting. Be aware of the environment around you. Be aware of everything surrounding you. And mentally say, I am not the body. Visualize your physical body melting away, completely disappearing. You are sitting in an ocean of light. Just inhale and exhale. I am not the emotions. I am not the thoughts. I am not the mind. The mind is just an instrument of the soul. I am the soul. I am that I am. I am a spiritual being of divine intelligence, divine love, and divine power. I am connected to my higher soul. I am one with my higher soul. I am that I am. Simply be aware of this sense of stillness, this sense of oneness. Be aware of the sensation of floating. While you're in this space of floating, where you're not the body, nor the emotions, nor the thoughts, not even the mind, you are the soul. And as the soul, let us invoke to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, Master Choa Kuk Sui, to Lord Mahaguruji Meling, to all the spiritual teachers, all the holy gurus, the holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, to my higher soul, to my divine self, to the angels of theosophy, to the angels of love and wisdom. Thank you for your priceless blessings of divine light, divine love, divine power, divine healing, inner healing, physical healing, psychological healing, divine help, divine guidance, and divine protection. Thank you for your blessings of abundance, prosperity, and spirituality. Thank you for blessing us with mental clarity, that we may understand the esoteric and abstract concepts. Thank you for blessing us with emotional stability and calmness, that we may take these concepts and make them a part of our understanding. Thank you for blessing us with physical strength, stamina, and flexibility, for blessing us with these energies that we may operate from a higher perspective. Let us be controlled by a higher self and not by the urges of our lower nature. Thank you in full faith. Now just take a deep breath. Inhale very slowly, inhale very, very deeply. Exhale slowly. Inhale once more. Just be still, be aware. Mentally imagine all the other people who are surrounding you, who are in this session. Just be aware of all of them. Mentally say, I am glad you are here. I am glad you are here. And then physically open your eyes. Be aware of everyone else around you. Atma Namaste. I am glad you are here. All right? Okay, so we shall start the session on the mental body. Today is session 2. Now, a very quick recap of the stuff that we've already covered so far and some of the things which we will be covering. Now, we've already spoken about the introduction and the general description of the mental body. We've covered into the mental elemental essence, which is, the essence of the mental layers, okay? So there are many layers and sublayers, and the mental elemental essence is one of the primary composition factors of the mental plane. Then we started a little bit on the composition and structure, but for the benefit of a clearer understanding, we will be covering composition and structure a little bit more today. Then we are going into functions and typical examples. And also to a certain extent, we'll be touching upon the mechanism of thought transference, actually the concept of thought transference, how it works, and the basic rules of it, and what are the mental exercises necessary in order to be able to achieve thought transference. We'll be touching upon that, okay? So we've already covered the introduction and general description. We've covered the mental elemental essence. Just giving you a quick recap of this visually, you've got the molecular matter at the elemental essence. You've got the 3 higher levels of the mental plane or the first elemental kingdom, the 4 lower levels of the mental plane or the mental elemental essence, and the 3rd elemental kingdom or the astral elemental essence. So when the soul energy, when it covers molecular matter, it's called elemental essence. And this name was given from very, very old times by very medieval occultists. And this name was given to them because the bodies of the nature spirits, they were composed of very elementary matter, hence elementals. That's it. So while the spirit, the spiritual energy is going on the downward course, it energizes the matter of the 3 higher levels of the higher mental plane. And then as it goes down, it spends an entire chain period of in that evolution. It goes on to the lower and lower stages of the mental plane. So then it creates the second, it ensouls the second elemental kingdom, and then it's known as the mental elemental essence. And the next period is the 3rd elemental essence of the astral elemental kingdom. Okay. Now, from then forward, we have to understand that for human beings, for humanity, man has already gone deep into matter and he's on the way up. So for things which are just evolving, the energy is this way. It's going down. For humanity, the consciousness has already gone down and now they're headed back on the way up. So man has already gone through this journey. He's rising out of matter and he's going towards his source. That is why in this current state of evolution of planet Earth, you got such a rise of spirituality. You got materialism on one side, like hardcore materialism, where people are only talking about money or physical needs, and they're not thinking beyond this lifetime. They're not even thinking of their children or grandchildren. Okay, accumulation of wealth and matters has just become was the predominant thing. And now we also have a large blend of spirituality. We have a physical life, we have a financial life, we have a career, we have all these things, but we also have spirituality. And the degree of evolution is such that there are those who are interested in spirituality on a casual basis, and those who are interested on a basis for helping others, for helping humanity, for helping whole of Mother Earth and all of Mother Earth's creations. Okay, so human beings, they are moving on the rise upwards. We shall see more details of this at a later stage. But for now, let's go into the composition and structure of the mental body. Now, the mental body is built of the particles of the 4 lower subdivisions of the mental world. So the mental world, which corresponds to the 4 subdivisions, you've got, like you have in the physical world, you've got, solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. You've got a correspondence of that in the mental world. So the mental body is built of these lower mental matters, okay? But still, the lowest of lower mental matters is still super, 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 super subtle when you compare it to the highest of the physical matters. So it's still very refined. Now, the 3 higher grades of the mental matter, so you've got the 4 lower grades, okay, which compose the mental body. The 3 higher grades of mental body create the causal body or the higher mental body. Why is it called the causal body? Now, you've got to be careful about the spelling of this. From the word cause, C-A-U-S-E, comes the causal body. A lot of people, a lot of authors, they call it the casual body. Now, casual body is a body you get when you don't work out, when you don't sleep, when you don't take care of your physical body. That body is just very casual. Okay, a causal body is the body where the higher soul resides. That's where the karma is. That's where all the causes of your life, of your future incarnations. The cause and effect is there. That's why it's called the causal body. Okay. Now, in so you've got the causal body, which is composed of the 3 higher levels of mental matter, and you've got the mental body, which is the 4 lower levels of the mental matter. Altogether, there are 7 levels. Yeah, 7, or however you prefer. In addition to ordinary mental matter, the mental body also contains mental elemental essence, which is the essence from the second elemental kingdom, as we discussed in the past sessions. Now, the physical body, as we know, is built up of cells, and each of these cells, they are a small speck of life by themselves. They are alive by themselves, and all together you've got one single consciousness which holds it all together. You've got what we call the me, the I factor. So I today am alive, but I'm composed of billions or trillions of cells. And then there are the other symbiotic creatures, like we've got intestinal or gut bacteria, okay, which reside in our systems, also the entire body, the bloodstream. Certain scientists, in fact, it's pretty well accepted that the mitochondria, or the powerhouse of the cell, as we learn in junior high school or school level biology, that also is a symbiotic life form. It just came together and it's composed of us. Now, can you imagine what it would be like if you were individually aware of each and every cell of your body? If your consciousness went into each and every cell of your body at any point of time. So you'd be aware of the working of each particle of brain matter. You'd be aware of each particle of food that you ate. You'd be aware of each breath that you took. That's quite a lot of consciousness to worry about. So the higher beings, the lords of creation, they said, okay, you don't need to worry about all of that. You are the soul. You have been given a physical body. Work the physical body. The basic functions, breathing, heartbeat, the brain functions, will all be taken care of. So the same thing, the same logic, that you've got the physical body built up of the cells, each of which is a tiny separate life animated by love. When you say second outpouring, it's love. Okay, it's love that keeps the physical body, well, which basically keeps all of creation going. So the same rule applies in the astral and the mental bodies. So you've got this life cell, it permeates them, it permeates through the mental body, but as yet there is no strong intelligence in all of them. It's just an instinctual understanding and cohesion of things that keep them together. Okay, you can best think of this as a baby. Okay, so you've got a baby, and the baby is not really aware of itself. It's not aware of its parents or friends or anybody, but it just knows that, okay, this is the mother, this is the father, they take care of me. So instinctively, they grasp or they reach for the parents. And then as their consciousness and awareness grows and develops, they'll reach out to more and more other people. Okay. So the shape of the mental body is ovoid. Before I talk to you more about this part, let me just show you what we mean by the ovoid shape. So this in the books, now this particular image is not exactly in the mental body book, but it's referred to in other books, most notably Man Visible and Invisible by C.W. Leadbeater. So the shape of the mental body is like this, it's ovoid, okay? You've got these colors which are there. If you attended the session on thought forms, you know about the colors, where yellow represents a higher mental intellect. You've got pink of love and affection. And you've got these higher thoughts which are raising upwards, which are the unselfish, divine, humanitarian kind of thoughts. And you've got the selfish, lower kind of thoughts. So if you pay attention to the color, you notice it's a dirty-ish kind of, it's a grayish kind of yellow. It's not a pure gold yellow kind of thing. Okay, so they've got these lower quality of thoughts. So just go back to this part over here. The shape of the mental body is like an oval. Okay, it follows the oval shape of the causal body also. And the matter of the mental body is not evenly distributed throughout the egg. In the midst of this entire ovoid is the physical body. And the physical body very strongly attracts astral matter. And astral matter, in turn, very strongly attracts mental matter. So you've got let's go back to the diagram. You've got the physical body in the center. This physical body attracts astral matter, and astral matter, in turn, attracts mental matter. And throughout the whole thing, it's encased in this egg-like shape. So consequently, the greatest part of the matter of both astral and mental bodies is gathered within the physical frame. So you've got this physical body. Okay, if you can see the screen, the webcam is visible. So you've got the physical body. Much of the astral matter is contained within it. And therefore, the astral matter also attracts the mental matter. So much of the mental matter is also contained within it. So therefore, when a clairvoyant looks at a person, tries to look at the mental body of the person, they will see basically the physical appearance, the outward physical appearance, and they'll see a lot of mist. Okay, so you've got the shape of the physical body surrounded by an oval or an ovoid, an egg-like shape of really, really fine mist. So in the inner worlds, in the astral worlds, in the mental world, now, especially if you've talked about the astral plane in the previous study sessions before, you know that the shapes and the thoughts, they vary instantaneously. If someone wants to think they're thin, they're thin. If someone wants to think they're super tall, they're super tall. If they want to imagine themselves as microscopic, done. However, in the mental world, a person will be very easily recognizable, just as easily recognizable as they are in the physical world. The portion of the mental body which projects beyond the periphery of the physical body, forms what is called the mental aura. So let's look at this diagram again. You've got the physical body, the astral matter is attracted within the mental matter, and it's formed this misty kind of shape. So you've got the mental body over here, and the part of it which extends beyond, that is called the mental aura, which leads us to imagine, it's just my understanding or my imagination, that if you have a mental body with a mental aura, you would have obviously an astral body with an astral aura, or even a physical body with a physical aura. So the energy body and the energetic aura, in my understanding, they are maybe different things. Now, the size of both the astral and the mental body is the same as that of the causal body. All right, or to be, if you have to be a little more accurate, the section of the causal body on the lower planes. So because you have the many planes of existence, so whatever the size of the causal body is on the lower plane, okay, in the mental, astral, and physical planes, the size of the astral and mental bodies is pretty much the same. Why? Because the causal body, you should also think of it like an egg that contains the mental body, that contains the astral body, that contains the physical body. So you've got to be super clear about this concept, that the size of the astral and mental bodies is the same as that of the causal body, only in the lower planes. Okay. You also have to be very clear that the physical body is not egg-shaped. Or it might be, again. So unlike the physical body, which pretty much remains the same size since, Atlantean days, so we're basically talking hundreds of thousands of evolutions before, the mental body grows in size as the man develops. Now, again, when we say the word man or he, it is not meant to say that only males go through this. It's a gender neutral term, supposed to be used as a gender neutral term. It applies for males, females, and all orientations in between, all identities in between. So then this goes on to say that the particles of the mental body are in ceaseless, they are in continuous motion. Okay. Moreover, they're constantly changing. The mental body generally continuously taking in energy, sending out energy, taking in energy, sending out energy. So there's a general store of energy. The mental body is always, you could think of it as communicating with the environment around it. Okay. Now, again, taking an example back from high school or school level biology, we know that there's a cell, right? There's a cell, and the cell has a nucleus. It has a cell membrane, okay? And the cell membrane, it exchanges vital fluids, information, electrical. So it goes through all of those informations and cells around it. Okay, wait, can you still see my screen? Just a moment, having some internet issues. Let me. Right. You should be able to see my screen again. Am I visible? Okay, great. Okay. So, so you have the cell membrane, you've got all of the information within the cell membrane, and they're communicating inside and outside at all levels, at all times. Likewise, there are all these human beings, all these other advanced souls, and the information is also being constantly exchanged. So it's not like just because there's a unit, it's covered in just one part. All of them are intercommunicating, interrelating to one another, to each other at multiple levels at multiple times. So yet, in spite of this rapid motion or exchange of information of the mental body particles amongst themselves, the mental body, it still has a sort of organization. It's loose, it's fluidic, at the same time, it's contained in and around. Okay. Any questions on this point so far? No? Okay, great. Right. So now we are just going to move on to the next part of this. And we're going to have this particular image kept alongside. So in the mental body, there are certain striations or certain markings which divide it more or less into irregular segments. And each of these segments, they correspond to a certain part of the physical brain. So you've got the mental body, you've got different segments of the mental body, and these different segments of the mental body have a correlation into different parts of the physical brain. Okay, all of these portions are not, however, equal. Neither are they fully developed. So especially for ordinary people, regular people, the mental body is imperfectly developed. It's not completely developed. So there's some in which certain departments, certain parts are very active. They are quite information, quite useful, while others are completely shut off. They are not even active. So you've got the mental brain body. The mental body corresponds to parts of the physical brain. Certain parts of the mental body are active, certain parts are not. That's why you've got some people who are really, really good at mathematics, who are really good, who are, say, artistic geniuses, who are, their PhDs and many other high levels. And you've got other people who have, some amount of development. They're of average or above average intelligence, but they don't have any real grasp or control over difficult or abstract topics. Why? Because the mental body is not yet developed. How can it be developed? Through study, through practice, through meditations, through various other techniques, good techniques. The result is that for those people who don't have the complete development of the mental body in other parts, they are very slow to understand certain subjects, certain topics. That's why later on, and in fact, we'll be covering this particular portion in a short while, we'll see that why some people have a clear concept of maths and they can explain the same concepts to them. Now, have you heard this term that just because you're a good student doesn't mean you have to be a good teacher? And vice versa, just because someone is a good teacher doesn't necessarily mean that they were a good student. Okay, at least we heard that when we were growing up in school times. So we would have these study groups where the top performer of the class, the top two or three students, they had to coach the younger students. And they would really get frustrated because they'd say, hey, come on, this is basic. How can you not understand something so basic? For them, 2 plus 2 was equal to 4. For us, 2 plus 2 was equal to the cow jumping over the moon. That's because, again, their portions of the mental body where the information came in was very, very clear. But they were not so developed in teaching or in communicating or in presenting or explaining. So just because they were good at absorbing did not necessarily mean they were good at releasing or presenting. The same thing happens when you think of the flow of energy. Something can absorb, but if it doesn't release, then what happens? It just becomes very congested. Or you've got some people who love to explain, who love to talk, who are talking all the time, but they don't spend any time in reading or researching. So what happens? They become super, super depleted. Okay. Or they take up a career where they only have to talk and they don't have to think. Are there any careers like that? So anyway, these striations of the mental body, they correspond to different aspects of development. Now, this is not just connected to the development. You see how this development happens is because good thoughts, they produce vibrations of very fine matter of the body. Okay, so what this text is basically saying, when you've got a lot of good thoughts, those good thoughts have light gravity, so they float up. And when you've got bad thoughts or sad thoughts or not so good thoughts, their gravity is heavier and they float towards the bottom. Okay, so lighter thoughts are lighter in color, they're lighter in texture, while bad thoughts such as selfishness or greed, they always oscillate or they always radiate towards the grosser parts, which tend to gravitate towards the lower part of the ovoid. Now, perfectly speaking, it should be really balanced. It should be completely balanced. Do you remember this term inverted egg-shaped? Most people, ordinary people nowadays, have an inverted egg-shaped aura. How many of you remember this term? Or have you come across this term? So what this term basically signifies is that the energy of the thoughts tend to vibrate towards the upper parts. So if we have an inverted egg-shaped aura, it means that our loftier thoughts, our higher thoughts tend to float up, while the grosser thoughts tend to float down. Now, consequently, the importance of this is the ordinary person very frequently thinks of very selfish kinds of thoughts, okay? And therefore, the energy floats towards the lower part of the mental body. So therefore, it then looks like a regular egg, okay? The large end is down and the small end is at the top. The person who does not indulge in the lower thoughts but devotes themselves to higher thoughts, they tend to expand the upper part of the mental body, and therefore they present the appearance of an egg standing on the smaller end, or as Master Chua Kuk Sui says, an inverted egg. Okay. Now, all such appearances, however, they are only temporary. The tendency is that this ovoid shape, it has a tendency to reassert a balanced shape. So nature abhors a vacuum, it abhors disbalance. It wants everything to be balanced. So it reasserts itself bit by bit, time over time. So from a study of the colors and striations of a man's mental body, a clairvoyant can perceive their character. They can perceive their development. They can see what their spiritual progress is like or what it can be like. Okay. Similarly, they can also see the causal body, which is composed of the three higher levels of the mental matter, and they can see what progress this higher soul has made from when they started their evolution in the human kingdom. So we know there's a mineral kingdom, then it evolves into the plant kingdom, evolves into the animal kingdom. From there, there's certain animals, and then from there, it evolves into the human kingdom. So depending on the shapes, the colors, and the striations, a very highly trained clairvoyant can see and accurately understand where a person's progress has been on the spiritual path and where that progress is likely to take them. So while you may have an egg-shaped aura or an inverted egg-shaped aura, the eventuality is it's going to try to come into a balanced shape in a balanced form like that. Okay. Now, a balanced state would be ovoid, yes, because all such appearances of being top heavy or bottom heavy in terms of energy, the tendency is the ovoid wants to maintain balance, wants to maintain symmetry, and it exerts this state of balance by degrees, bits and pieces, not all of it at the same time. And that's why it's like from our state of evolution, if you try to take I'm giving a personal example, there are days in which the meditations has been fantastic. It's been beautiful and the world is at peace. But then something happens as a trigger somewhere, maybe at home, maybe at work, and suddenly the whole thing changes. So imagine what the state of mind or what the mental body's composition would look like at that point of time. See, there's love, there's a pink energy, there's intellect, there's a blue energy, there's devotion, so there's a violet energy, and the energies are all upward moving. So you've got the inverted egg shape going on. And then suddenly something happens to upset you. Okay. So what happens? Does the inverted egg shape become completely reversed? Does the violet turn into black? Do you become that, no, I'm not going to bless anyone, I'm going to hurt everyone? No, it doesn't happen. There is some amount of upset, there is some amount of distrust. And then gradually the state of mind goes back into, okay, let's bless, let's forgive, let's detach, let's go, or let's let go. But it takes time because it brings you back down a few notches and then you have to rebuild yourself up by a few notches. Have you noticed this in yourself, in your life? Likewise, someone might be feeling really, really bad. Suppose you've got a client or a patient who is super depressed. They will have a very unhappy frame of mind. And then you start doing healing on them, you start counseling them, they start improving. Now, do they go from complete depression to complete, ecstatic joy overnight? Of course not. But they oscillate back and forward. Some days are better, some days are not, some days are more better. So until from the starting point to the ending point, there is a up and down motion. So life has its ups and downs. Yes, as you've very correctly said, life has its ups and downs. It's not a bed of roses, nor complete challenges. And hence you have to have this series of changes. Now, even if you are sleeping on a bed of roses, remember there are thorns. So be very, very careful if you are sleeping on a bed of roses. If you're sleeping on a bed of only rose petals, that might be different, but then it might stain your clothes also. So even then, in spite of all the great happiness, there is a little bit of sadness. So balance eventually gets into that state. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Now, it says the mental body is refined in its constituents. Before I talk more about the theory part on this part of the screen, let's look a little bit at this photograph over here so we can have that in context. I'm talking about this particular paragraph. We shall see in later that every thought gives rise to vibrations in the mental body, which is accompanied by a play of color. And this is described as that of a spray of a waterfall as the sunlight strikes it, but it is many, many more degrees raised in color and vibrance and delicacy. Okay, so here is actually the closest image you could get to a waterfall and sunlight striking it. It doesn't say that it creates a rainbow color. So you might have seen photographs, maybe you've traveled to certain locations where there's a huge waterfall, and then you can observe the waterfall from the side and you can see the sun rays. And there's always a little bit of like a rainbow color, which is there all the time. Okay. The mental body, it does not say anything about the rainbow colors, nor any rainbow bodies, nothing. All it says is that it's this light which strikes this fine mist, like the spray of a waterfall, and it is raised in many colors in vibrance and how delicate it is. So if you've got something like a spray from a say a spray bottle, you've got this very light thing, and you've got the light striking it, it creates a vivid kind of effect. Now, because the mental body is not 100% developed and it is in the process of developing, it cannot exhibit or demonstrate all of those vibrant, vivid colors immediately or at the same time. It comes through bits and pieces, part by part. Okay. When the development is raised more and more, then the colors become more vibrant, more developed. So, with this kind of image in mind, we now have to also remember the previous context, which is that the mental body, when a clairvoyant sees him, is like fine mist. So you've got the physical body, you've got the astral matter mainly in the physical body, you've got the mental matter also in the physical body surrounding it. So the mental matter looks like fine mist. So that's why this explanation is the mental body is more or less refined in its constituents in accordance to the stage of intellectual development. So the more intellectually developed the person is, the more refined the constituents is. The less developed, the grosser it is. So you got really fine particles on the top if they're very developed, and really thick and gross particles at the bottom or overall if they're less developed. But that said, the mental body is an object of great beauty. It's very delicate, and the particles are always rapidly moving, which gives it an impression like it's iridescent light or glowing neon light. And this is beautiful, and this beauty becomes very radiant and it looks lovely as the soul, as the person grows in their mental intellect. Okay, and their thoughts are of pure topics, nice topics. So if you have someone whose talks you enjoy listening to, someone whose words of wisdom, very soft spoken, very gentle, and there's a lot of kindness, loving kindness, and wisdom in their thoughts, in their speech, you will understand that and you will gravitate towards that because you're also attracted to the refinement of the mental matter. So you have this saying, right? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's because the student has started creating that form of the mental body. The mental body has become more and more refined, which has some sort of a connection with the teacher's energy also. And then the teacher comes and the student's development is taken forward. Okay. The mental, right. Now, here, of course, we have to talk a little bit more. There's a concept of the mental unit. So, what is a mental unit? So, just like you've got atoms, which is basically the fundamental building block of matter, every mental body, okay, so if you think of the mental body as a cell or as a molecule, every mental body has a single molecule or a single unit. This is called the mental unit, and it belongs in the fourth mental subplane. So where does this remain? Let's quickly go back to this slide. Yeah, so here you've got the seven subplanes. Okay, it's in the fourth subplane, so basically over here in this one. So every mental body has a single molecular unit, which is usually of the fourth mental subplane, which remains with the person during the whole of their incarnation. Okay, and we'll see the materials of the mental body, they're scattered and regathered again and again, life after life, but the mental unit remains as a stable center all the time. So you've got the mental unit and you've got the mental body formed around it. You've got the astral body, the physical body, and so on. And then the person dies. Physical body is gone, astral body is, energy body is gone, astral body is gone, mental body also dies, dissolves, it's gone. but the mental unit, this mental particle, this remains. And then when the next incarnation comes in, this same mental unit is brought back, it stays at the center, and then it regathers all the mental materials. And the mental unit remains as the center, stable the whole time. So you've got the mental materials around it, and then it forms the rest of the bodies over and around surrounding it. So the mental unit might be regarded as the heart and center of the mental body, and it depends upon the relative activity of the different parts of that unit. Okay, so yes, you could think of it like a it's more than mental software, because software can be deleted, software can be corrupted, software can be uninstalled. So you can think of this as the chip. You got the more fundamental chip, the most fundamental unit. It's better, instead of thinking of it in software terms, it's better to think of it in atomic terms. So the entire material around it can be completely destroyed, but the central fundamental atom remains. You can't destroy an atom. So the atom is there, and it recreates all of matter surrounding it. And life after life, all the other things get destroyed, but the mental seed unit, the mental unit, this remains with it throughout. Okay. Now, you could think of it, if you're coming from a pranic healing background, you've heard of the permanent seeds, emotional permanent seed, mental permanent seed, physical permanent seed. So this is basically what we're calling is the mental permanent seed. Okay. And the use of this permanent seed, of the permanent atom, especially of the mental permanent atom, is to preserve within itself as a vibration the results of all the experiences through which these bodies, these incarnations, have been associated and they have passed. Okay, so the various activities of the mind, they fall into certain classes and divisions, and these are expressed through different parts of the mental unit. Okay, now, of course, mental units are not the same. They vary greatly, they differ greatly according to the type and the development of their owners. So let's take an example, putting it into a more practical spin. If you've got a person, uh, have you heard of these young piano prodigies or these young violin virtuosos? They're like from age of 2 or 3, they're already masters at playing the piano or playing the violin, or they're super good at drawing or other things, maths and stuff like that. I keep using maths and the violin as an example, but anyway, why? It's because their experiences have been gathered towards mathematics or music or art or whatever. So they're so good at it that in their next lifetime, they just start off from it from the very base itself. It's not a big deal to them. And their development, so this part of the mental body connected to maths or music, is super well developed, and they can take this experience forward moving ahead. So their lifetimes are virtuosos. Now, the mental unit, of course, they can belong to any of the 7 types of matter. We're talking about this part here, about the 7 types of matter or the 7 rays of matter. It should be noted that all the permanent atoms of the mental unit of man belong to the 7 type or the same type of ray. Now, before I proceed further, quick question. Do you know what the 7 rays are? Do you know what the 7 rays are? You can just type in the chat window if it's there, because that will be very important. Okay, so you don't have it on psychotherapy yet, so you don't know about it. Quick show of hands, those who know about the 7 rays, could you please type in the chat if you know about it, and those who don't know, because then I will go a little bit into depth. Otherwise, it's going to be a little superficial. So if you could just type in the chat, let's see how many know about it. So one person knows. 2 will, love, intelligence. Yes, not by heart. Yes, not by heart. Okay. All right. So, okay. And I suppose it's in everyone's best interest if I just give a very quick summary of it. So the 7 rays are, you can think of it as personality types. Okay. So you've got rays 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, obviously. You've got ray 1, which is willpower. Okay. You've got ray 2, which is love. And you've got ray 3, which is wisdom. So like you have love, light, and power. Okay. You've got willpower, ray 1, love, ray 2, and intelligence, which is ray 3. Okay, so you've got various technical names. I'm just giving you like a really, really short summarized version. And you've got on the corresponding side, ray 1 corresponding to ray 7, which is structure and organization. You've got ray 2 corresponding to ray 6, which is love and devotion. And you've got ray 3, which is higher abstract intelligence, corresponding to ray 5, which is, say, a more concrete form of intelligence. So you've got willpower here of doing a lot of great activities, and you've got willpower here in an organization. So ray 1 corresponding to ray 7. You've got love for all of humanity, ray 2, vis-a-vis devotion for a single cause or an ideal, so ray 6. Then you've got ray 3, which is abstract intelligence, and the correspondence of that is ray 5, which is, say, a more basic kind of intelligence, a more concrete kind of intelligence. So a ray 3 kind of intellect would be, say, an architect who thinks about buildings and everything all the time. A ray 5 person would only be thinking about the construction of their own house, as an example. So you got rays 1 to 3 on one side, you've got rays 5, 6, 7 on the other side. What's left in between? Ray 4. The job of ray 4 is to harmonize all the conflicting factors. So you got someone who wants to build a great house or a great set of apartments, but they don't really care about the design inside. Ray 4 will come in and make it a nice design. So you've got these rays 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a very short summary. Light, love, and power. On the other side, light, love, and power, but on the inverse. And you got ray 4 in between, balancing all of it. Now the mental, why are we talking about this? It's because the mental unit, the mental permanent seed, it may belong to any of these 7 rays. Okay. Now it should of course be noted that the mental permanent seed, they belong to the mental unit of a man. So you've got the mental permanent atoms and the mental unit. Okay, they're different. They belong to the same type of ray. So a person who has a mental, the mental permanent atoms are of ray 1 type, which is very willful. Their mental body will be a very willful kind of person. Okay, they're going to focus. They're going to get things done. On the other hand, if you've got a mental body of a person who's very, very ray 4, is very artistic, then they may be willful, they may have other aspects of their quality, but predominantly they'll be expressing it as art. So it's not really possible that you have someone who's extremely willful, then that's their permanent ray, that's their permanent atom, and their mental units are that of an artist. It's a dichotomy because like energies will attract. So the mental unit therefore corresponds in the mental body to the permanent atoms in the causal, astral, and etheric bodies. So the mental unit in the mental body corresponds to the permanent atoms in the causal, astral, and etheric bodies. If a mental unit is laying at rest, then the force radiating it from it would make a number of funnels. Okay, that's just a lot of text which is there. Let's explain it with this diagram. So I would like for you to imagine just that these lanterns over here, you can think of it as the mental body. Okay, think of each lantern as one mental body, and this light at the center of the lantern, think of it as the mental unit. So mental unit and the mental body surrounding it. Okay, if the mental unit is just at rest, then it radiates a force, and the force radiating from it would make a number of funnels or outforce of energy in the mental body. And this light would shine through. You can see it just like you'd see in a lantern. It makes a large radiating funnel of light in the air between the lantern and the sheet. So what does it mean? You've got the mental body here. You've got the mental unit at the center. You've got some air on the side, and then you've got the mental body around it. So the mental unit is laying at rest. It radiates this energy. It radiates the light, and this light shines through, and the light illuminates. So in effect, the more developed the mental unit is, the more developed the mental body is, this state, this light, this illumination will shine forth in the whole world. The light of the being will shine in the whole world. Is that the ideal state? So we've got a question here. Is that the ideal state, that the mental unit is at rest? There is no such thing as the ideal state in this, because it always looks for balance. If there is always at rest, then how will there be any development? You have learned certain things in life through your experiences, and your experience allows you to know not to repeat the same mistake later on. Classic example, a young child touches a hot plate. Oh, it's burnt. So the child now knows not to touch the hot plate again. However, if the child's always at rest, then there is no gathering of these experiences. So the wisdom doesn't grow. We grow through our experiences. We go through, our knowledge develops through our experiences. So therefore, we always have to have a state of rest and a state of activity. So there is no one ideal state, because the mental body will always strive for balance. If it's completely resting, it's going to become flat. If it's always activity, it's going to become stretched balance. Okay, is this part clear? Do we have any questions on this? Okay, all right. So this is the basically how you could think of the example of the mental body, the mental atoms and permanent units. Let's go on to the next one. Now, you can think of the surface of the mental body as the sheet of the lantern because it's only visible at the surface. So when someone sees this from outside, only then will you be able to see the effect. When you're inside the mental body, when you're seeing it inside, obviously you can't see the effect of it, because if someone is sitting down, basic example, if someone just sitting down and thinking, the results of those thoughts are not felt. But if someone goes out and writes a book or does something, creates something, that is when they can understand how intellectually developed the person has been. So the mental unit, like all other chemicals, all other things in existence, is constantly rotating. And because of this rotation on its axis, that the effect is in the mental body, there's a series of bands. So because of the series of rotation up and down, round and round all the time, you've got lofty thoughts, you've got depressing thoughts, you've got ambitious thoughts, you've got sexual thoughts, you've got thoughts of food, fantastic, you've got thoughts of money, you've got thoughts of relationships, you've got all these kinds of things happening all the time. So the mental body has striations, therefore you can think of this unit as the various layers and levels that can always be there in the mental body. They will not always be the same size, they'll not always be the same width, they'll not always be the same number. It's always changing, but you can still see and understand it. Okay. So if you go back to this diagram and kind of try and correlate it with this, when an aspirational thought comes, when a high level thought comes, it inevitably shows itself as a beautiful little violet circle at the top of the ovoid of the mental body. As the aspirant, as the spiritual aspirant draws closer to the spiritual path, this circle increases in size and radiance. So you've got the spiritual seeker, you've got the disciple, you've got the initiate and all. So in the initiate, it's like a splendid glowing cap of a lovely color. In their words, it's of the most lovely color imaginable. So it's a really developed color over there of beautiful violet. Below that violet comes now in this particular presentation, this image there, it's the color is not that distinguishable, but the description says that below this violet comes a blue color of devotional thought. And it's usually a very narrow thought, except in the case of the few for whom religion is really, really important. For spiritual people, the violet is more important, it's more predominant. There's a little bit of blue, okay, because we have devotion to the spiritual teacher, to God. But for ordinary people, for some people for whom religion is really, really important, the violet will be less and the blue will be more. Now, from the top part, it comes to the middle zone. There may be a much, much broader zone of affectionate thought. Okay, a lot of love and affection. And these can be any shades, which can be like darker shades like crimson or subtle shades like rose, okay, rose colors, according to the type of affection which it indicates. So if there's a lot of deep love, deep affection, genuine love, then it's a lighter color. But if it's a more selfish kind of love, a more possessive kind of love, it'll be a darker color. Now, again, there is a very close connection of this in connection to pride. Okay, because pride, if you remember the older sessions, they've got a spiritual kind of pride, you've got an intellectual kind of pride. So the people who like to think they're really, really smart, and that causes a lot of pride in the systems. So along with this, there comes the yellow belt of intellect and fills the whole upper part of the egg. But it's commonly divided into two bands. It differentiates between a philosophical kind of pride and a scientific kind of it. So you've got some people who say, oh, I have a lot of spiritual awareness, a lot of spiritual knowledge. That creates itself one kind of mental development and its associated kind of pride. And you've got those who say, no, I don't believe in spirituality. For me, everything is science, everything is logic. I have to measure it. They have that kind of pride which comes with it. So both of these are necessary spiritual developments because of the development of the mind. However, there is a sense of pride along with it. Okay, and the color of it will change. But there are two primary colors connected to it. And the place of this yellow color, it varies quite a lot for different people. Sometimes it fills the entire upper part of the egg. It rises above devotion and affection. So in such a case, if a person is very spiritually, has a lot of spiritual tendencies, but they are very proud of how much spirituality they have, that's when that yellow color, it rises above the egg, okay? And instead of the violet being on top, this yellow is on top. So that, clairvoyantly seen, will denote a person with a lot of spiritual pride, with a lot of excessive pride. And below all of this, in the middle section, okay, so we've got the top part of it, which is violet and blue. In the middle part, then it comes the pink and the yellowish kind of colors. And below all of that, in the middle section, lower middle section, there's a broad area, a broad belt, which is devoted to concrete shapes. Okay, this is the part of the mental body from which the thought forms are connected, from which the thought forms work and function. Okay, these parts, the thought forms, although we've covered the section before, the mechanical aspects of it will be covered in chapter, I think, chapter 8. And the principal color in this lower part of the system is often green, and with shades of brown and yellow according to the nature or character of the person. Okay, so basically that's the mental body. That's what it looks like. There are lots of striations, there are lots of shapes. These striations and shapes are always changing depending on the character and the intellect and the development of the person. The colors will rise up, they will rise down, they'll move around and around. Okay. Now, there is no part of the mental body which varies more widely than this, basically this lower part, this entire area. Why? Because the thought forms are there. So in the entire system, this lower part of the mental body varies the most. So some people, they have their mental bodies crowded with a huge variety of images and thoughts and ideas, while other people have only a few, have very, very few of it. Okay. Again, in some people, these thought forms, these ideas are very clear and very well outlined. For others, they're super vague, super fuzzy. Okay. In some, they're very organized, classified, labeled, arranged, while others, they're just utterly confused. So depending on how the thought forms are present in the mental body, you can get an idea of the kind of person the person is in the physical world. So are they organized in their thought process, or are their thoughts haphazard and mumbo jumbo? Are they clear, or are the ideas vague? So you'll have some people who come and say, I've got an idea, let's do this seminar, ABCDE, deliverables XYZ. Okay, we'll do this at this time on this date. Clear, very clear. And you got some people, hey, I have an idea, let's do something. Yeah, I don't know what, maybe you can do something on, I don't know, love. Maybe you can do something on. So you come across all these people who've got varying ideas and concepts about their entire life. Okay. And of course, this whole thing varies according to their mental development. Now, in the lowest part of the ovoid, so just coming back over here, which is basically this part, the lowest part over here, the lowest part of the ovoid, that comes the belt, which expresses all kinds of undesirable thoughts. It's muddy, it's precipitated, it's dirty, like selfishness or greed. Okay, these often fill the lower third, or sometimes even the lower half of the mental body. And there is sometimes a ring of hatred or cunning or fear. So dirty colors, unpleasant kind of colors. Okay. Naturally, as a human being develops, this lower part vanishes. The upper part gradually expands until it fills the whole body. So, again, a state of growth and spiritual development. The general rule, this is an important slide. The general rule is the stronger the thought, the larger the vibration. The stronger the thought, the larger the vibration. The more spiritual the thought, the more rapid is the vibration. So, someone has a very strong thought, okay, let's do this, creates a big vibration. And the more spiritual the thought is, the vibration's rapidity is super, super high. So the strength of the thought produces brilliance, and spirituality produces a delicateness or a delicacy of color. So strong and vibration. So someone can have a very strong thought, but it's very selfish. So the vibration is low. Someone has a very spiritual thought, but it's not a very strong thought. So it's a very high vibration, which dissipates and vanishes. Okay. So this is about the structure of the mental body. You've got the shapes, the striations, the colors, the strength of the thoughts, the spiritual tendencies, and all of this. From this, we're going to go into something called the functions. Okay, this is the section we'll be covering today, which incorporates some of the mechanisms of thought transference and how some of these came to be. So if you have any questions on this up to this point, please ask. All right, let's go on to this. What is the function of the mental body? The mental body is the vehicle through which the self manifests and expresses itself as the concrete intellect. The mind is basically a reflection of the self. When it says the cognitional aspect of the self, it means the self, like I am the soul, I am that I am. The mind is a reflection of this knowledge, of this information. So the mind is the working of the self in the mental body. So the mind is just a subtle instrument of the self. For ordinary people, for the majority of people, they are unable to separate the soul from the mind. So consequently, for them, the mind is the soul. So you'll have, at least this was very common in our school, not school days, college days, where this is, do you love me for my body or do you love me for my mind? And then someone who's super smart would come and say, no, I love you for the soul. And I say, what's that? No, I mean, it's not the mind. No, what's the soul? It's the same thing as the mind, right? So a lot of confusion which remains. So for the vast majority of ordinary people, they are unable to form that subtle distinction between the mind and the soul. Whereas for those who are already on the spiritual path, they know that the mind is simply a reflection, it's just an instrument of the soul and the soul's awareness of I am the soul working on that. So the mental body is simply the vehicle, it's simply the instrument through which the soul expresses the intellect part. Now, this is a very natural part because of the root traces. So this is going back, this particular section which we'll be talking about. It's connected to when we did the solar system studies. So by the way, if you have not attended the study sessions on the solar system, on the astral body, on the thought forms, I encourage you to do so. They are available. We are keeping them available until I think end of this month, or if not the end of the year. Just message us in the group for a donation. It's available. Okay, so you can get all that. It'll put a lot of this information into context, because we are coming from vast information to narrowed down information, and then using that narrowed down information to understand the vast information again. So in the solar system, we spoke about the chains of evolution, about the root races and the sub races and so forth. Now, in the present state, we are in the fifth race, okay? And we are working on the development of the mental body. So in the past, it was the physical body, which was the vehicle of consciousness. After that, it became the astral body, okay? It was partially used. And the usage of the mental body is the work which humanity is right now supposed to do. So in the past, using the physical body. Then next race, the astral body, partially, physical, astral, and so. This root race, which we're at, the fifth one, we are supposed to be engaged upon the development of the mental body. Now, the astral body is connected with expressing desire. It's called kama. Okay, you've heard of the word kama in certain sutra before. It's connected with expressing desire. Now, desire here doesn't mean only one type of desire. It basically means emotion. When you are emotionally connected to something, you desire a partner, you desire a raise, you desire a house, a car, you desire spirituality. So desire need not be only something that's thought of as gross or dirty. It has a lot of light and aspirational components as well. So the development of desire or emotion was the work of the fourth root race, or what we call the Atlantean root race. Okay. And it was the special work of the fourth sub race of the fifth root race, which are the Celtic people. Okay. Again, more references on this in the past study sessions. If you go back talking about the past sessions, we won't be able to proceed with the present study. So I'm just moving forward from there. Now, we've learned that, or we know that the astral body's development was in the past root races. The fifth race and the fifth root race and the fifth sub race, root races, sub races, all of this, they are intended very specifically to develop the mind. And the mind's job is to understand, is to discriminate, notice the difference between things. What does this mean? See, it is the job of the soul. I read this in some one other spiritual book. I don't remember the name offhand. I think it was one of the Hindu texts. It says that the job of the soul is to unite. There's only oneness. Okay, spiritually one with all, spiritually one with God. Is the job of the mind to divide, the opposite, to discriminate. So the mind has I, me, and myself, or I, me, and mine. Like this is my cup, this is my phone, my class, and not mine. So I recognize that this is my phone and that is not my phone. Babies don't have this concept. What's mine is mine, what's yours is mine, what's on the floor is mine, everything's mine. That's why it's a baby. But as they grow older, as we grow older, the mind differentiates, it discriminates. So a more developed mind, a sharp mind, is able to discriminate not in terms of objects or things or possessions, but in terms of the soul, in terms of spirituality. So I am not the body, not mine. I am not the emotions. I have emotions, but I'm not the emotions. I have thoughts, but I am not the thoughts. I'm using my mind to understand that I am not the mind. So what am I? I am the soul. So the job of the mind is to discriminate, is to cut away and remove all the unnecessary stuff and to bring in a connection to the higher soul. And the job of the soul is to unite. So the mind discriminates, divides, soul unites. Right. In the same context of the mind, at the present stage of partial development, most people look for differences from their own point of view. And they don't do it in order to understand the differences, but they do it to resist it. And that's why you've got so many wars. You've got people who are talking to other people not because they can understand them, but because they want to fight with them. However, when this faculty, when the mind, the mental body is perfectly developed, all these differences will be noted calmly and solely for the purpose of understanding them and judging what is best, not to fight, but to understand. And there's a nice quotation on this. When we listen to something, do we listen to understand or do we listen to reply? So now we may go further and say at the present stage of development in the fifth subrace, the weakness in others is something that there's a tendency to exploit, okay? Something to dominate. Rather, we need to rise above it. And it might be quite unpleasant, but this development, this process is essential because this ability to differentiate, to release what is unnecessary is what is eventually going to bring us to what is necessary. And that is to understand spirituality, compassion, service, love, joy. So we need to go through a process of differentiation before we can get into a process of integration. Okay, now your attention will obviously go to this very interesting cover. I'm not sure if it's from the book or if it's from a comic book. Either which way, it was the closest reference I could find to the Lords of the Flame. There's a nice little story connected to it, so we'll talk about that in a bit. But before that, we have to go through some of the theory, which is that our present development, it happened and it is there because we have to understand, control, and develop emotions and to overcome it. So this stage of development of mind and emotion in the human race in our present time needs a bit more understanding. So the fifth round or the fifth race, root race, is intended for the unfolding of the intellect. And a stimulus has been provided to all of us in this root race by the Lords of the Flame, which you see here. And this intellect has already considerably developed in vast quantities compared to what the normal development is. At the same time, okay, what does that mean? What do I mean by that? In the last 100 years, we've gone from an aeroplane, from human beings trying to imitate birds how to fly, to flying to outer space. And transporting hundreds, thousands, millions of people globally every week, every month. So from people looking at the skies, wondering how to fly, to getting frequent flyer miles. Can you imagine the amount of development that's happened in 100 years? In the last 100 years, the amount of progress that has happened is far, far, far more, exponentially more than any kind of development that has happened in the centuries, in the millennia preceding it. And this happened because of a stimulus given by the Lords of the Flame. So who are these Lords of the Flame? Interested? Or should I just skip on to the next part about the theory, about the self and knowing and thoughts? So if you want the story about the Lords of the Flame, we can talk about it. Otherwise, we just move on. See, all of your webcams are off, so I can't see you and react to you. So I'm basically reacting to my own reflection on the screen. So you either have your webcams on or you start typing, all right? Have the mental body, give my astral body the validation it needs, okay? So I can interact with you. Okay, so you've got 5 or 6 people who are definitely interested. All right, I am proceeding with the story. The Lords of the Flame, okay, these are very highly developed beings who came from the planet Venus, and they came to Earth during the third root race, which was again many, many hundreds and thousands of years ago. And they took charge of our evolution. Their leader in the Indian books is called Sanat Kumara. Okay, have you heard of this name? Sanat Kumara. I'm putting it in the chat, Sanat Kumara. So their leader of the Lords of the Flame is a very highly developed being called Sanat Kumara, and with him came three main lieutenants, and there were 25 other assistants, but who were adepts, super developed beings. So you got Sanat Kumara and his three lieutenants and 25 other adepts. About 100 other ordinary human beings were also brought over from Venus and merged into the ordinary humanity of the Earth. This is again connected to the solar system. So the previous cycle of evolution, Venus, they all came from there. So when we speak of great ones, the great ones, sometimes some people ask, who are these great ones? These are the great ones. Okay, they're the ones who are referred to in many of the esoteric books in the secret doctrine. They as who project a spark into ordinary people, asleep people, unawakened people. Okay, unawakened, and their intellect is woken. So their action was really more in the terms of like a stimulus, and their influence, their presence drew humanity towards themselves and enabled more and more other people to develop the spark within them to be individualized. So these higher beings, these lords of the flame, they came in 1 plus 3 plus 25 and another 100 along with them, and they sent their energies out into the earth. Now, again, I'm not very sure, but I think it's mentioned in one of the older books of the Old Testament in the Bible that the sons of man and the sons of God walked together, and the sons of man wed the daughters of man, and new life came forward. Something of that sort. It basically talks about the high intellect spark coming in and inspiring more and more people so they also grew along with. It's not to be taken literally, but how the energy from the higher dimensions came forward, came down, and enabled everyone to be interested in spirituality and to develop themselves. Okay, so this understanding of this particular point of energy, this influence, it's important to know this because we have to analyze and study and understand that intellect is different from all the other vehicles. Okay, however intelligent a person might be, however sharp a person might be, the soul is different from the bodies it uses to express itself. In that same context, it is mentioned about consciousness and awareness, and there are three types of intelligence. So you've heard of this term, right? Instinct, like mother's instinct or a woman's instinct or the animal instinct. It's when you just do something. You don't understand it, you don't know why you're doing it, you just know about it. Okay, so it's an instinct. It's a very basic level of intelligence. For those of you who've done pranic healing, advanced pranic healing, psychotherapy, you will know about the navel chakra and the importance of the connection of that with instinct. Above this comes the intelligence. What is intelligence? It's logic. It's at the higher level. Okay, it's not the lower level. So first you've got instinct, then you've got intelligence or intellect, wherein you rationalize that, okay, if this is this, then that is that. It's the story of the four blind men and the elephant in the room. You know that story? Four blind men, they walk into a room, there's actually an elephant. So one catches a hold of the body and says, oh, it's a wall. One catches hold of the leg and says it's a pillar. One catches hold of the trunk and says it's a rope. One catches hold of the tail and says it's a fan. And then one guy comes in, and so these four guys, they put their observations together and they say, oh, it's an elephant. And one guy with eyesight, he comes in and he doesn't have to explain why this. He just knows it's an elephant. So direct knowing is intuition. So top part is intuition, then there is intelligence, and the lower level is instinct. So consciousness grows upwards. You have instinct, you have intellect, and then finally you have intuition. In all of this, there's one question I've always had, is that how patient was this elephant? She just stood there allowing these blind men to just find out what she was. Super patient elephant. And that is why you must also have a certain amount, you should cultivate your intuition, is because sometimes the elephant might not be very gentle. So you might be using what you think a lot of logic and a lot of understanding, but that elephant in the room is getting pretty annoyed. Okay. So that's why it's called elephant in the room. What if it was a lion? You would have smelled it. You would have. What if it was a lion? It would not be lying around. Okay. It'd be growling. So consciousness, therefore, not survive to tell the story. For those of you who are going to watch this on replay, you've missed out a lot that's happening on the chat room. So please, if you're watching the replay on this on YouTube later on, you guys are missing out. You guys are missing out on this lion and dead meat. I am not the body. I am not the state of consciousness of the body. Let's bless the lion. All right, let's bless the lion. God, that was funny. So basically, consciousness is a unit, and the divisions we make for it are either for study or because our understanding of it is just limited, so we just fool ourselves. Consciousness is consciousness, and we understand all of it through our mental and higher faculties. Okay, right, moving on. Now we come to, again, some bit of theory. So you've got the self. Just like I explained, there are three parts of it. You've got intuition, you've got intellect, and you've got, what was the third one? Instinct. So you've got intuition, intellect, and instinct. The self has three aspects, which is knowing, willing, and energizing. And from these three, there arise different kinds of thoughts, desires, and actions. Okay. So the whole self, the higher self, it knows, it has the willpower, and it takes action. And these are not individually separated. Okay. They're whole. So when the higher soul, when the soul has to do something, he knows he has to do it, and he gets it done. Okay. Now, of course, the language over here is very, very poetic. I'm not reading it aloud, but you try reading it aloud for some time. When he knows, he acts and wills. Okay, anyway, that's for you to do later. But one function is predominant. So either knowing or willing or energizing. So one of these functions is super, super predominant, and sometimes to such an extent as to cover all the others. But even when they're super concentrated, all three, they're always overlapping and always present. Okay, and it can be understood. Is this confusing? It's confusing. Let's try to explain this. So you've got the higher soul. Okay, you've got the higher soul. You've got the aspect of knowledge. Okay, when the higher soul is just still, it's not moving, it's not doing anything, knowledge comes in, and this knowledge can take on thought process of anything. So you got something you're sitting on. What are you thinking about? You could be thinking about any kinds of things, but you're still. Can you think? Can you really, really have knowledge when you're in the frenzy of activity? No. Knowledge gathering happens when you're still. But when the self is really concentrated, okay, it's really focused, it wants to change, it wants to do certain things, then comes the willpower aspect. So when the self takes this energy, it decides that it has to do some work, it takes this energy forward and moves the work. That is the action side of things. So it will be seen that knowing something, willing to do something, and taking the energy to actually go ahead and do it, these are three things which are not really separate, but ultimately it's the one thing manifesting as whole. So you know you got to do something, you get up to do it, and then you actually go ahead and do it. Some people, they know, they're not willing to do stuff. Some people do stuff without knowing why they do it. The three work together: knowing, willing, and energizing. So there's a question here: is intuition the same as energizing the self? It's more to do with the development. The more development there is, the more mental development there is, the intuition develops. Okay, so meditation, especially to enhance meditation, is really, really good for developing the higher faculties. Okay, so from the standpoint of yoga, possibly the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the mind has got three divisions made to it. And it's very interesting that the number three keeps making an appearance, of course, because of the Holy Trinity. And the mind is just the individualized consciousness, and that is, you've got all kinds of activities which is connected to the awareness of objects. So you've got the aspect of intelligence, which is the awareness of objects. You've got the desire to get objects, and you have the effort made to attain the objects. So if I go back to this slide, you got knowing, willing, and energizing. You have an awareness, you know about it. You have to get that object. So you have your emotional body gets activated, and then your physical body starts making an effort to attain the objects. So intelligence is connected to awareness, desire is connected to obtaining, and physical is connected to effort. So when you're doing a physical effort, it's that part which is getting affected. Now that's the mental. So you've got higher planes also. On the Buddhic plane, cognizance, such as pure reason, pure understanding, is what is the predominant energy. Each of these aspects, awareness of objects, desire to obtain objects, endeavor to attain objects, is present all the time, but one predominates at one time and another predominates at another time. What this is basically trying to tell us is everything is working in one unit, in one flow. But we think it's just a physical need. Then we think it's just an energy need. Then we think it's just a emotional need. Then we think it's just a mental need. Then as we develop further, we'll understand it's a spiritual need or Buddhic. Eventually we'll see all of these needs are connected. It's all coming from oneself. Understanding all of this leads to an understanding of the higher self. And it's why yoga basically means union, to attain union with the higher self. That's why there are many paths to this union. And this path, the one we're following right now, is to understand theoretically with intelligence. That is called Jnana Yoga, or the yoga of knowledge, or the union with the higher soul that happens through knowledge and study. Okay. Now, okay, this is a more technical portion, but we have to cover it. Returning to a more detailed examination of the mind, we learn that abstract thinking, or thinking of concepts, is a function of the higher soul expressing itself through the causal and mental bodies. Concrete thinking is performed by the mental body, and the mechanism of concrete thinking is what we are going to consider right now. Okay. Now, if you're thinking, obviously you will remember your thoughts, and you have imaginations. If I ask you right now to think of your bank balance, if I ask you to think of your bank balance, most of you have a clear idea in your mind, right? Right? Okay. Now, if I ask you to imagine to add 5 zeros after the bank balance, not before, 5 zeros after, you're super wealthy right now, right? That is imagination. So you have knowledge, you know how much money you have in your account, and then you add your imagination to expand upon it. So it's in the mental body. You just used your mental body right now to utilize memory and imagination. The root of memory, or the germ of memory, lies in tamas, or inertia. Okay, so you've got the 3 states of activity, which is sattva, rajas, and tamas: rhythm, activity, and inertia. So memory lies in inertia. Why? Because it is old, it is in the past, it's not doing anything new. So your old memory is always there, it's already there in the past, it's just re-vibrating an old vibration. So memory, those who spend a lot of time thinking only about the old days, reminiscing, they tend to be on the lazier side. In our time, things were like this, in the past this, in the past that. The past is in the past, forget about it. What you gonna do? Move forward the future, change, move things. So the mental body is therefore the vehicle of the thinker, of the higher soul, who resides in the causal body. So the higher soul resides in the causal body. So when you say, where is my higher soul? It's in your causal body. And your mental body is simply a tool for making that happen. But while the mental body is supposed to be the vehicle of consciousness in the lower planes, it also works on the astral and physical bodies. And therefore, the consciousness of the body, the consciousness of the mind, the consciousness of the emotions is altogether called mind. So when you say mind, it talks about the physical consciousness, it talks about the emotional consciousness, and the mental consciousness. So all 3 together constitute what we call the mind. Okay. All right. Now we come to this. We've talked about the mind and the abstract part. So now we're going to be utilizing this to get to a more abstract understanding. The process of thought, thinking, memory, and all of it, it's the vibration of the mental body. Okay, so we're going to have what, maybe 10 minutes more of this portion. If we do 10 more minutes of this, this chapter will be over. Shall we continue, or do we do it for next time? Because it's already been 1.5 hours. What do you want us to do? Continue? Okay. Okay, continue. Fantastic. So in details, the process is like this. They have an act of concrete thinking. It sets into vibration the matter of the mental body. So this vibration becomes 1 octave lower. It goes to the grosser matter of the thinker's astral body. And from there, it goes on to the etheric particles of the brain. And then from there, it goes to the dense gray matter of the actual physical brain. So, your brain has gray matter, white matter. For people who don't think the brain doesn't matter. Okay, bad joke. So basically, the vibration starts from the mental body, goes down to the grosser vibration of the astral body, goes lower down to the vibration of the etheric party of the brain, and from there to the final dense gray matter of the physical brain. So therefore, before a thought can become a part of the consciousness, all these steps happen in succession, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, you've got the nervous system, you've got something called the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. So for the purpose of our examination, we have to understand that the sympathetic nervous system is connected to the astral body, while our cerebrospinal system is under the influence of the mind or the mental body, on the control of the higher soul. The process described described over here, we can expand upon it a little bit. So if we say that the whole of the physical brain can be spread out, so you've got the physical brain, the whole physical brain, you spread it out as one particle thick. Okay, so it's going to look something like this. Imagine your whole physical brain is this size, maybe even smaller. Okay, I'm just going to come back to this later on. So imagine this is your whole physical brain. If it became one particle thick, okay, then we may further suppose that there are correspondingly the astral and mental matters laid above it. So you got the physical brain, one particle thick, and you got the astral component and the mental component also one particle thick over there. So mental, astral, and then the physical. So therefore, we now have 3 layers of matter, physical, astral, and mental, of differing density. And they all correspond to one and the other. So just as you have over here, you got one layer, physical brain, you got another layer, astral, you got another layer, mental. And they all correspond to one another, but they're not joined together. Except that here and there are wires of communication between the physical and the astral particles, between the astral and mental particles. And this is basically a representation of the human brain. So now over here for this example, let's imagine that whole thing. So this was the whole of the physical brain. Let's imagine it super condensed down into something really small. So you have over here certain parts connected to certain other parts. You got certain connections which are complete, certain connections which are not. Over here in this portion, there are no connections whatsoever. So suppose there is a very abstract thought, say the higher soul is sending some communication. It's coming down from the physical to the mental. The thought itself cannot progress down because the channels are not yet open. So you've got only this channel over here, but the channel below that is not created. If the full channel was created, then yeah, the communication would go through, but it's not there. It's only partial. And that is why for this information to reach the physical world, the information might have to go sideways. It might have to go, instead of here, it has to go take a different path on the side from there. And then this information, some other piece of information comes over here. So while it could have been super easy for this thought to go straight down, now it has to go from path A to take a diversionary path to take another path. So instead of being able to drive on a straight road, it has to go through traffic and rerouting and different ways. As a result, by the time this thought passes from the mental body to the physical plane, eventually through a path which is not very suitable, in spending all that time and that effort, the method becomes very awkward, very clumsy. So now let's take this as an example. Suppose this was an idea of, say, mathematics. If someone is explaining, say, calculus, but the channels of calculus are not created, they're not been developed. So it passes through the channel of, say, algebra. And then for some reason, it passes through a channel of something else. So the concept of algebra, see, for me, also the concept of the mathematical channels is not very clear. That's why my higher soul is sending a thought. It's not going straight into my brain. It's going through different tactics and different places and finally coming into my head in a very scrambled egg form of manner. The concepts are not clear. So therefore, we can understand why, for some people, they have no understanding or concept of mathematics or no taste for music or no taste for art. The reason because is that part of the brain devoted to that subject, to that particular field of study, the communication channels have not yet been opened up. But on the other hand, if you ask me to talk to you about food, I can tell you that the three main meals of the day and the three sub meals of the day, and each of these meals should be had individually. So you can take one part of information, bring it down together, and extrapolate it on forward. But if the channels have not been created, good luck explaining anything, good luck understanding anything. So um, knowledge is coming from the mental plane. The channels have to be created to the physical plane. When there are multiple channels which are created, the knowledge comes through very, very clearly. So this knowledge is connected to the development of the mental body. The kind of knowledge that they're attracted to depends on what kind of ray they belong to. For the adept, for the perfected person, every particle has its own wire or tube, and they have full communication in every part of the brain. Therefore, every thought has its own appropriate channel through which it can descend directly into the corresponding matter of the physical brain. So you've got a physical brain, and it has all of these areas which it's supposed to be super good at. Okay, everything connected to everything. So for an adept, a perfected person, a genius, they can look upon a subject and they can understand it and they can explain it. Why? Because they have all these clarity, these connections which are there. That's why you have super enlightened beings who are depicted as having halos or rings projecting outwards throughout their heads. Why? Because it shows the great development of the mental faculties. According to certain texts, the Buddha, have you seen images of the Buddha? And he's got all these circular, his hairstyle looks like super, super curly hair. That's basically all those channels which have been created and communication is happening all times. So all these channels are created from the mental body to the physical, and there are multiple channels happening all through, not part by part. Okay. Now let's go on to this example again and take it to another level forward. So here on the topmost level, we've got the self, which is the soul, and the not self, which is, say, the body. So I'm not the body, not the emotions, not the thoughts. So you've got the body over here, you've got the soul over there. If we analyze the process of consciousness in a very rough outline, we're going to have to work from the body to the soul. So you go on a journey inwards. So from the not soul, we first observe first contact on the physical body. Okay. This is converted into the astral body into sensations. Okay. From the astral body, the sensation is transformed by the mental body into a precept or an idea. From the idea, the precepts are elaborated and becomes a solid concept. And from there, it goes and becomes a part of the self from which material for future thought can be created. So again, just to very quickly cover this part, you have a sensation, you have an external stimulus on the physical body that is converted to a sensation by the astral, that becomes a precept or a general idea, that becomes a solid concept. Once the concept is clear, we can take that concept and create many more ideas, many more thoughts and plans surrounding it. So every contact with the physical body modifies the mental body. So if there's a young child and the child touches a hot plate, the mental body gets a sensation. So the astral body gets a sensation of heat. It gets an idea that hot things cause pain. It creates a conception that with more increased temperature, there's a greater chance of damage. From there, the concept becomes clear. Temperature can be up, temperature can be down. If there's more temperature, there is certain damage. If there's too little temperature, there's another kind of damage. So therefore, a balanced temperature at all times is what is ideal. So every contact on the physical body is essential because it helps us acquire knowledge, information. Now I'm giving just a very basic example of a child touching a hot plate. You can take the same example and extrapolate it into your life for any kind of sensation, not just a physical sensation, but any kind of emotional sensation, any kind of mental stimulation that you may have had. So when Master Choa says, when the teacher says that what you take with you is your spiritual development, you cannot take, obviously, we can't take our physical wealth with us. What we can take with us is our spiritual knowledge, is the experiences. We can take this forward. We can take this into life after death. And then for the next lifetimes, we can take that information with us. So if you're thinking, you got the job of the higher soul is the establishment of knowledge, of the establishment of relationships between the ideas and concepts which are formed in the mental body, and then converting a concept into a precept, into a sensation, into an experience. So it's always a cycle which goes round and around. So when a man is reasoning or he's using logic, he's adding something of his own to the information contributed from outside. We just covered this. So as his mind works on the material supplied to it, he links various perceptions together, creating it into one large sensation, into one large image. So any activity on the mental body has an effect on the astral body, and the effect on the astral body has an effect on the etheric body and on the physical body, on the nervous matter of the physical body, and then the senses and the interrelation of all those senses. This entire process, physical to astral to mental to soul, and then vice versa, soul to mental to astral to etheric to physical, this leaves what is called a track or a nervous track. And along this track, you can have another current which runs upon it. So therefore, if you have a group of particles that are concerned with a particular state of vibrations or a particular group of activities, if they are reactivated again, then the vibration runs along the track already formed and it reactivates other particles. This is what is called neuroplasticity in modern sciences, where they say instead of brushing with only your dominant hand, you can use your other hand to brush your teeth. It creates new neural pathways. It keeps your brain young. So what all of this is basically saying is if you want to keep your mind sharp, do new things. So when you revisit this particular part of this chapter, all of this is summarizing, is telling you that briefly is the mechanism of associated ideas. So when you do a mental activity, there is a physical component. If you do the physical component a little differently, you're activating higher mental powers. Okay. Now, here, the mind therefore works as an extra sense. Now, it's not the senses of the mental body itself. You've got the senses of the physical body also. Let me explain this to you with another slide, which is much easier. Now, we know we have already 5 senses, right? Sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. These are what are called in Yoga Sutras as the Gyanendriya. Indriya, the word Indra, Indriya means senses. Gyan means knowledge. So, or consciousness in this case. So, consciousness, knowledge of consciousness through the self comes in, or the knowledge of the physical world comes in from the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the skin. Okay, where you have this explained as a basic knowledge, which you already know. But along with Gyanendriya, there is something which is known as Karmendriya, karma, or the organs of actions. So the mouth speaks, the feet, they move, the hands, they do. The anus is the organ of excretion or elimination, and you've got the organs of procreation, of doing things. So you've got sensation and you've got action. So it was indicated that the job of the mind is to take all of these various avenues of consciousness and to link all of them together. So you've got these 5 physical organs of sense, and you have the 5 physical organs of action, and they're linked together through one sense, which is the mind. It is the mind that connects them. So therefore, in the Hindu scripts, it speaks of the mind as the 6th sense. You've got the 5 senses. The mind is spoken of as the 6th sense because it takes in the sensations of the ideas and the perceptions that combine through the 5 senses. They combine them to a single precept, to a single concept, and from there it becomes one large idea. So therefore, the mind is known as the Raja, or the king of all the senses. All that we sense, all that we understand are through the mind. So if we take into account the 5 organs of actions, which is the karmendriyas, as well as the 5 organs or sense of the gyanendriyas, the mind then becomes the 11th sense. And in the Bhagavad Gita, there is a mention made of the 10 senses and the one. Also, for those with an esoteric knowledge, you know about the city with 11 gates, 10 plus 1 gates. on that note, we can conclude this particular part of the chapter with this note that if a trained student passes into the mental world and from there they communicate with other students, they are speaking at once through colors, through thoughts, through these ideas, these precepts which have been created. They're communicating not using language, but they're communicating directly with ideas. So when thought transference is happening, that is basically the mechanism. You have a clear concept and you're transmitting that concept to another person or to other groups of people. So if a spiritual teacher comes and tells his student that, okay, you need to start a new modality, you need to heal people, the concept will be transmitted from the mind, from the mental body of the spiritual teacher to the spiritual student. And then the spiritual student has to spend 10, 20, 30 years to spread those teachings, to understand and spread those teachings. And then those concepts come into the other students, and then they also start spreading the teachings. But thought transference, entire huge concepts can happen from the mind just if the idea is clear. So there are no distinct organs for sight, hearing, touch, taste, or smell in the mental body. In fact, there is no senses in the mental body because the mental body itself is the sense. So in order to communicate directly by thought without having to formulate any words, without needing any languages, what you need is to have a very clear concept, is to have a very clear idea. So the process is the purpose. If I want to transfer a thought, I need to have a lot of clear thoughts first. When I have a lot of clear thoughts, the idea will be easier to transmit. So on that note, I'm sorry I took a little bit longer than those 10 minutes. We've concluded this chapter also of the mental body. And if I go back to the table of contents, we've pretty much covered these 4 parts. The next few, karma, manas, thought waves, thought forms, mechanism of thought transference, unconscious thought transference, and these ones, they'll be covered pretty much in the next chapter. We should be able to complete in the next 2 sessions the majority of this. Okay, we'll possibly require maybe a bonus topic on another day or so on the other things, but maybe if you increase some of the time, we can cover all of it in a much faster way, or maybe within 4 or 5 sessions itself. So if we don't have any questions now, or maybe you can ask the questions in the group. That's it for today's session. Thank you for all of you who've joined in. And for those who are going to join in watching the recordings later, you really should have been there for the discussion on the lion and the elephant. It was fantastic. All right. So thank you everyone for joining in. Let's give a prayer of thanks. Take a deep breath. Just absorb all this information you've assimilated. Assimilate the information you've got. To the Supreme God, to my spiritual teacher, to my higher soul, thank you for giving us this opportunity to gather together as a group, to understand my soul, myself clearly, to understand my mind, to understand the workings of my mind. Thank you for helping me become a clean, clear channel as a good instrument of the work of the teachings, for helping me to become a better person and a better soul. I thank you in full faith. Thank you. Thank you. With gratitude, with deep respect, with lots of love, with all our love, we thank you. Thank you. Atmas, namaste. See you again next week for the next session on the mental body. Thank you, and have a good rest of the day.